Welcome, everybody, to the Cold Truth Podcast, where the addiction is chemical. I came up with that tagline, copyright Micah Hicks.
You're so cringe, Micah. I love it.
No, it's okay. The viewers love it. They love it. Eli, what is new in your world?
Man, I'll tell you what. I got a free cookie today at Jimmy John's, so I'm living large in two senses of the word. So
Well, Eli is on Cloud Nine in Cookie Land. And Eli, would you please introduce to us our guest today?
yes, it would be my pleasure. So today we have with us Debbie Koske of Calibration Technologies, who I would dub as the spunkiest gal in the ammonia refrigeration industry. So if you've ever been to a RETA conference, IAR conference, you are sure to have met Debbie, and she leaves a great impression. And so Debbie, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I didn't even know. I didn't even remember what it stood for. So everyone just calls it CTI. So I'll just throw that out there in case anyone missed completely what Eli was saying.
That's right.
Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you.
Well, great. I'll kind of just kind of jump in here, Debbie. If you could kind of just frame the conversation. What I'd like to talk about today is just ammonia detection and ventilation requirements. But before we do that, I'd love to just hear about you, your career, and how you came to work at Calibration Technologies, and kind of hear that story.
Yes, I am so excited to be a part of CTI. It is a fantastic place to work, and I was hired 8 years ago. And the reason that I even knew about the job is because the founder of the company, Brian E. Daly, and I were friends in college. And so Brian and I knew each other for a long time. They were looking for somebody to hire in the marketing department, and Brian gave me a call and asked me to apply for the job. And I said, but Brian, I really don't know anything about ammonia refrigeration or ammonia detection. And he said, we can teach you that, Debbie. He goes, I know that you know how to take care of people, and that's what's most important in our company. And I have found that to be so true. We take care of our customers. We solve problems. Brian has given us just the ability to do what it takes to solve customer issues. And so it's been a really great place for me to work. And he was right. I've learned ammonia gas detection, and I have become a big ammonia fan. So people in my company, when they talk about me, they go, oh yeah, that's Debbie. She's kind of crazy for ammonia. But I am so grateful. I knew nothing about ammonia before I started working for CTI, and I really do believe that our industry is full of unsung heroes. We are feeding the world and saving the planet through ammonia refrigeration, and nobody even knows that we're here. So I'm very grateful to be at CTI and to be part of this industry where we can help keep people safe as they're feeding the world.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to we're in a big defense town here in Huntsville, and some of those jobs, it's a little like what am I working on here, and it's a little scrupulous, but I just never have those thoughts or questions. It's like I'm supporting an industry that's feeding our country and feeding the world, and like you said, they're the unsung heroes, and so yeah, that's a great way to put it. So.
And that's where me and Eli started too. Like we didn't know what ammonia was until we got introduced to it, you know. So I feel like that's a common thread that a lot of these people have. So it's really neat to see new people get into the industry, and I'm glad that it's such a welcoming environment. That's what I've experienced just on phone calls when I was, really young here. People were just so open to just talk about things and share knowledge with you. So, and that's really, the point of this too, is just like, can we get that knowledge out further? So, yeah, that's awesome.
We're an open book here at CTI, and we want to help whoever we can.
Well, and I'll just say this: my exposure to CTI, when I started in the industry, they were already a pretty big player, but there were some other manufacturers out there that I would see in the field. But I was hearing some issues with those, and I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. But since I've started, CTI has only gotten bigger and bigger. It seems like year after year, and I mean, I think we talked about this in the conference, and it was like, where do I put, when I'm in the field, how often do we see CTI? And I think conservatively, it's over half the time. They're CTI sensors. And so, Micah, has that been the case for you? I know.
It's probably been well over 50, I would say. I mean, I honestly would say, I don't see a lot else. I mean, you've got some other brands that pop up, but I would say, overwhelming majority would be CTI detectors. I think they've kind of become the baseline. I think the assumption is you're going to get those. So, yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad that you guys see that out in the field. And I think that goes back to something, again, our founder said to me. He said, other companies who make gas detectors, the gas detection part of their business might be 10% of their product line, but 90% of their headache, and for CTI, it's 100% of our product line, and we don't think it's a headache at all. Like, it's all we do is gas detection.
And I resonate with that because a lot of companies, PSM is the exact same way. It's 10% of their business and 90% of their headache, and they just don't want to do it. And it's like, dude, I eat, I just consume PSM. It's what I love to do. And so these big companies that don't want to do it, it's like, send it our way. We'll eat it up. So
Yeah, we'll take it. We love it. Yeah, and they're like, yeah. But these companies that their main line is valves or compressors, and they have detection on the side. Detection's our main course, man. I mean, that's like what we do. And so we can really focus on it and make sure it's done right.
the other cool thing is I feel like every time I come to a conference, you guys have some new piece of technology. You have a new portable ammonia sensor or, some new technology. And so, it's cool to see how you're able to innovate as well.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. Another great reason to work here. We have an engineering department right here in the same building. I mean, our guys are here designing things, improving things, constantly taking customer feedback. And our service department guys are right next door. And they come back and they go, it'd be great if we could do this, or this customer is asking for this feature. And so our engineering department, puts it on their list and builds it into the next version. And so that's a really fun thing to be able to have that direct connection between the guys that are servicing it and the guys that are building it.
That's so important, and I think in any industry you're in, it's not about how smart can I be to build the thing I think the customers want. It's how fast can you iterate once you learn, hey, this is the thing they actually want, and just kind of be improving quickly. So,
yeah, it's been really fun.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to just kind of jump into this conversation, and a lot of the requirements for our industry, we're pretty blessed in that it's simplified in that we just really have to follow IIAR, right, the International Institute of All Natural Refrigeration. It used to be real complicated, but it's kind of converged onto this one suite of standards. But we were, in preparation for this podcast, Debbie, you were mentioning that you had posted on a forum about what questions we should ask, and you got a pretty funny one about, basically why should we care about ammonia?
Yeah, somebody said, I'm like, how are you guys? We asked the group, the ammonia refrigeration group I think it was a Facebook group. And I said, how are you guys reacting to IIAR 9? Is it affecting you? And they said, we're not scared of IAR 9. They're not the police department, or something along those lines. Like, we're not expecting to see the IIAR police. They never show up here or whatever, like who enforces it? And so I think that's a great question for you guys to answer. Like, who does make sure that IIAR gets enforced?
Well, the reason IAR has these expensive membership fees is because they are building up a police force. That's what they're doing. So, no, that's a great question. Yeah, we get it all the time, and it really goes back to my favorite acronym in our industry, which is not PSM but RAGAGEP, Recognized and Generally Accepted Good Engineering Practice. So we live in a performance-based world, in the PSM world. And it doesn't, like the law in EPA's RMP or OSHA's PSM does not say to follow IR 9. That's not in there. But it says that for mechanical integrity, for the system design, various points throughout the regulation, it's going to reference RAGAGEP, which is recognized and generally accepted good engineering practice. And so now, how do we know that IAR is RAGAGEP? We have pretty wide experience with the EPA and OSHA and various other authorities having jurisdiction that are pointing to IAR as the RAGAGEP. And so what I can say is that you as a facility have the ability to kind of determine what is your RAGAGEP. And I'll be the first one to say, if you want, you can try to say that something besides IAR is a better RAGAGEP. That's possible. If that's a fight that you want to have with the EPA or with the OSHA, be my guest. I mean, if we're partnered with you, I'll try to help you out with that. But as best as I can, I just don't want to have that fight. I'm going to say, yeah, the industry has recognized IR as a standard, and it's a minimum standard. Maybe you can be more strict than that. But certainly the EPA, if they're coming on site, they're going to be referring to IR 9 for older facilities and new for or 2 for new kind of greenfield facilities. So it's just not a fight that I like to get in. And Micah, I know you get these kind of questions all the time from our customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's always a question. It's like, why do we have to do that? We already do that in our PSM program. And I try to the EPA, I've seen some reports from EPA audits, and like all they're talking about is IIR. Like and like Eli said, you can try to, say, oh, we've got our own RAGAGEP, we comply with something else. And it's like, okay, I mean, I don't think EPA is going to accept that, and you're going to have a long time, a long fight about that. So better to avoid the fight and just do it. And in addition, I think IAR actually does a really good job of setting that minimum standard. It's like, if you're complying with IAR, I think you have a great baseline. And I was trying to explain to someone the other day who didn't understand that, IIR and like IAR is separate from PSM. It's like yes and no. I feel like IIR is just the ammonia specific PSM laws. And if you comply with IAR, you're there, so that's what they're looking for. Like, do you have P&IDs? Do you have a written policy? Do you have these things in place? And, IAR 6 and 9, I mean, 9 is really just setting that minimum standard, right? Of just, are you complying with design codes? Are you complying, is your facility complying with those minimum standards? And so it's a conversation we have a lot, and I think it's just an education thing. And, EPA, of course, they're not super public about what, sort of like the IRS. They know exactly how much you owe. They're not going to tell you, though. And it's sort of the same thing, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of IR6, they're really, so IR6 is the standard for inspection, testing, and maintenance. And it's really a minimum standard. If you only do what IR6 says to do, you're probably not going to have a great operating system, because it's really just minimum in terms of maintenance. And there might be some other things that aren't captured there, that IAR maybe even had a recommendation to add something to it, and they just decided we're not trying to go above and beyond what's minimum to ensure the safety of the system. That's, they're not looking for highest operability, but minimum safety. But Debbie, what, you guys have a service department there. What do they have? What do they kind of bring back to you in terms of, maybe something that they see in the field with deficiencies as it pertains to maintenance of ammonia sensors or kind of anything surrounding that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just talked to our director of service right before we started this recording, and he said that they've definitely seen an increase in enforcement, that some big name companies that I probably shouldn't say here, but you would recognize, are being targeted for inspections and, being fined if they're not meeting them. And so I wonder too, I know there have been a couple ammonia incidents, unfortunately, in the news, and I do think that it is being targeted by the EPA and OSHA for closer inspection.
Right, and so the minimum requirement is a 6-month calibration on ammonia sensors. Is that the main thing that they're kind of missing, or is there any kind of bump test? What are the things that they're missing, do you think?
Yeah. So in IIAR 6, some things have to be tested annually and some things have to be tested semi-annually, twice a year. So the calibration of the detectors has to be done every 6 months. And that's what we recommend as the manufacturer. That's our manufacturer's recommendation, and it's what IIAR says. And it's like checking the batteries in your smoke detector, right? And so a common misconception, and I heard you use both phrases in the same paragraph there, bump test and calibration. Sometimes those get used interchangeably, but they really are two different things. Um, so it might be obvious to everybody. Would you like me?
Please do. No, yeah, please explain it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so a bump test is just exposing a detector to the target gas and seeing what happens, right? And hopefully the alarms will go off, the vent fans will come on, whatever it's supposed to do, it'll do. Calibration is much more precise and it's much more accurate. And an ammonia detector is similar to a smoke detector in a lot of ways, but and you have to test the batteries in your smoke detector, and you have to test the the detection cell in your gas detectors. But a smoke detector just says, is there smoke or is there not smoke? An ammonia detector has to say, yes, there's ammonia, and this is how much. Because as we know, the danger level varies greatly depending on the concentration. And the actions you want to take based on the concentration are very different. And so that measurement has to be accurate. And detection cells, their accuracy fades over time, changes over time. And so that's why those have to be tested. So a calibration is when you take a known concentration of gas. If your detection range on your detector is 0 to 100, then you take 100 ppm calibration gas, you expose that to your detection cell, and you see what the reading is. If the reading is, oh, it's close, it's 90, I'm exposing it to 100, but it's reading 90, then you can tweak that and make it match to 100. Okay, so that's calibration. So that is very different than a bump test. And so the calibration has to be done every 6 months.
And while we're on the topic of calibration, do you have a bead on the ratio between facilities that do that in house or hire out that service, actually calibrating?
That's a good question. I don't know. We definitely support either choice. We think a good option or a good compromise is the facility doing their own calibration once a year and then hiring an outside company for those annual inspections, because the things that you have to do annually, you calibrate every 6 months, but annually you need to actually test to see that your valves are shutting down, right? That all your alarms are the right audible level, and things that are a little more disruptive and a little more plant wide. And so it might be a good idea once a year to have a professional calibration company come in and do that for you.
And one thing I've heard from a few companies that are pretty risk averse in terms of like liability talk about the benefit of having a third party do it, because when you're always doing your own calibrations internally, if there was a leak or something, it might be called into question of like, was this really calibrated correctly, or are you trying to hide something? And so anyway, I'm not saying that's my opinion. I've heard some folks talk about that.
Yeah, and I think if you get into the fine print of the standard, I think it does say the calibration needs to be done by a qualified person.
Yeah, IAR likes that verbiage, and that's a conversation we've had. My understanding, based on the research I've done, is that that's intended to be vague so that the facility can decide what that means. So in the instance of gas detection, it would be, you know, have something in your program that defines what a qualified calibrator would be. Like, who is authorized to do that? Do they have the training? Do they have the equipment to do that? But I would love to see in the future some more specification and potentially a push towards third party, or maybe some more verbiage for that, because same thing with like same thing in IR6, right? With like annual MI inspections. Every fifth year, it's done by a qualified inspector. I think the widespread interpretation of that, is third party, and it also says, somebody who isn't affected by doesn't have their hands in the program, right? The mechanical integrity program, because you don't want that bias. And of course, somebody at a facility, I'm not saying that they're doing this, right? But it's expensive to replace a bunch of alarms, and it's expensive to go get them calibrated. So it's really easy to say, oh, close enough, So yeah, I think that verbiage is vague, but I definitely would push people to say, yeah, get somebody who's doesn't have a bias towards just checking the boxes and pencil whipping.
Yeah, and here at CTI, again, this is one of the reasons I love working here, because we want to support the people who do their own calibrations. We will answer their phone calls. They'll be at the detector going, I can't figure out how to do this. We'll walk them through it. We want those detectors to get calibrated, right? Whether they do it themselves or we do it, we will help them. But you're right, it can be a little bit tricky. And sometimes it can be questionable. I don't know, is this cell's a little slow to respond? Will it be good for another 6 months, or should I replace it? Sometimes our techs who do it every day are better equipped to make those calls.
Well, and along these lines of calibrations and sensors, well, one thing we're in the thick of here at Macha PSM is IR9 has this new requirement of doing a minimum system safety evaluation, MSSE, by January 1st of 2026. So we're recording this here early December. And so we're just doing, Micah, do you even know how many we're doing in December? It's just a bunch of them. We're even doing one. Well, yeah, no, they are. Yeah, they are. So anyway, kind of flying all over the country doing these MSSEs, trying to help people kind of meet that deadline. But have you seen, Debbie, on your side with CTI, any response to this activity in terms of an uptick in any kind of certain purchases of certain products, or what are you hearing from the industry on this?
Yes, we absolutely do not have people calling in and saying, I just had an IIAR9 inspection and I need this. We haven't had any direct comments about IIAR9 specifically. However, we did just have a record sales month in October, like our biggest sale month ever, which was very exciting. We can't directly correlate that to IIAR9, but we are selling a lot of detectors. And we have seen an increase in our sale of the horn strobes. That's been very mysterious to us. People ordering like 50, 60 of our SHA 120s and SHA 240s. It's very important to us, SHA 24s, I mean. We have SHA 120 and SHA 24. It's very important to us that we keep our products in stock. We like to promise, same day shipping if you order before 1, overnight delivery if you need it. And we have gone out of stock on our horn strobes twice this year, and we do not like that. So we're trying to figure out if we need to just keep more in stock in a general, let's like up our baseline, or if it was just an anomaly peak.
Fluke, yeah.
So if you guys have any input on that, we'd appreciate it. But we don't see a lot of direct comments about IIAR9, but sales are very strong.
Well, excellent. And one thing I know, Debbie, we've talked about is the regulation in IR2 for new facilities is a little tricky in terms of the different sensor points and ranges and how many sensors you need to have. Can you speak to that, especially as it pertains to the machinery room?
Are you talking about IIR2?
I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. For IR2, it's do we need one? Is one sensor acceptable? Do we need two? Do we need three? And what does that look like? And
I am going to open a document here that's on our website. We do have under our resources tab a codes and design document that I'm just going to refer to real quick here just to make sure I get it exactly right.
There was this anecdote of Albert Einstein that was being interviewed by a reporter. At the end of the interview, he says, "Can you give me your phone number so I can call you if I have questions?" And he goes, "Sure." And he stands up, he walks over to his bookshelf and gets out the phone book. He finds his name in the phone book and reads off his phone number to this gentleman. And he was like, "You're the most brilliant guy. Why are you, why can't you just memorize your phone number?" And he was like, "Well, if I know where to find the information, why do I have to keep it stored in my brain?" And so kudos to you being like Einstein. You know how to find the information. That's all that matters.
Time. They're like, you were just like Albert Einstein, Debbie. You're, but thank you. No, in the compressor room, in your engine room, according to IAR standards, you need to have 2 low-range detectors that are for redundancy. And those need to be set to alarm at 25 parts per million to a monitored location. I said alarm, they just need to notify a monitored location. Then at 150 ppm, they need to activate the emergency ventilation system. And then according to the standard, at 40,000 or 4%, they need to shut everything down. We don't make a detector that goes that high. Our highest detector range is 2% or 20,000 ppm, and we've never had anybody ask us for anything higher than that. People don't want to wait to 40,000 to shut everything down. Ours go up to 2%, 20,000 ppm, but most people want it to be shutting down at 1% or 10,000 ppm. Is that what you guys see too?
Yeah, it is. And whenever I hear the 40,000 ppm, it's just helpful for people to know kind of the background of it, that it's not just this arbitrary number. And it actually dates back to like why IIR was founded. It used to just be ASHRAE, and it had all these requirements that really weren't suited for ammonia refrigeration, and they were going to have to up the electrical classification for machinery rooms because ammonia has this really defined kind of narrow flammability range. And so they kind of IAR made a bargain basically when they started publishing standards. And what they did is they said, if we just make sure it never gets to the flammable range, can we just not have it be a classified location? And classified locations are annoying because you have to, the wiring's all, it's a lot. So that's right. Yeah. So the 40,000 is 25% of the lower flammability limit of 160,000 ppm. And so that's why 40,000 is the maximum. Now, as you mentioned, Debbie, you don't have to be at 40,000. If you're below that, that's more conservative, and so that's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. But yeah, so and then now before IAR2 made this change to having the redundancy, you technically could have everything in one sensor, but I told people, do you really want to start shutting down your system at 150 parts per million? Most people don't want to do that right yet. You want to turn on your ventilation system, but you don't want to start shutting off compressors and pumps and closing valves. So the simplest thing I've seen is that it used to be new systems. You have you walk in, there's 2 sensors, kind of a high and a low. But now, if I understand you right, there's one high and 2 lows for the redundancy. Is that right?
Yes, and that IAR said that, it wasn't our decision, but the redundancy at the low range. And then we also have found, just through our experience, that it's very important for these to be accurate, and you can't use the same detector to alarm at 2% and also at 25 ppm. We have found that we use completely different technology in both of those detectors to make them more accurate. The low range detectors use an electrochemical cell that's just more accurate at those lower levels. And then our high range detector, the 2% detector, uses a catalytic bead sensor technology that we have just found to be more reliable at those higher ranges. It's just like you use what do you call those when you're trying to measure a tiny micrometer, or those little caliper things if you're trying to measure a small amount, or you use a tape measure, right? So you just have to use the right tool for the amount that you're trying to measure. And we have a 10% rule of thumb that we use. So if you're trying to detect 25 parts per million, we recommend that your detection range is 200, not higher than 250 parts per million. Because the bigger your range, the less accurate it's going to be. So we have a 10% rule. So if you are trying to detect 10 parts per million, which some people want to do, we can do that. But then we want the detection cell to be calibrated, have a range of 0 to 100, not 0 to 250. So you don't want your range to be more, you don't want your detection limit to be less than 10% of your detection range.
Well, and that's what I think I see in the field is that in the machinery rooms, the low level ones are 0 to 250, GG, NH3, 250 or whatever, and then the ones in the rooms are the GG, NH3, 100. And so they're wanting that lower level sensing range to be a little more, the finer calipers, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of people want it to alarm at 10%, or I mean at 10 ppm, not 10%, 10 parts per million in your production areas where the people are.
Well, and another question, Debbie, in regard to those sensors, is the location, both in the machinery room, the low levels, high levels. Are they are they in one per room? Do they have to be per evaporator? Like, I'm sure you get a lot of those questions. What are you usually telling your customers?
That is probably our most common question is where do we put these things? Where we bought them, we're getting ready to install them, where do we put them on the wall? And we've gone into locations where they're on the ceiling, and we're like, oh, okay. Not what we would recommend, but IIR did a big study a few years ago, and they did a computer simulation of where an ammonia leak would end up. Does it go high? Does it sink to the floor? And they found that it was very hard to predict, and it was very dependent on the conditions in the room, the temperature, the size of the leak, the humidity in the room. And so they said in the standard, it says ammonia detectors shall be located in the area where ammonia is likely to accumulate.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay, so does that mean you put one all the way up the wall every 2 feet? We don't think that, we're not going to, what we have consistently recommended before that study and after that study is that our detectors, we would like to see you install them at breathing space. And that's because the priority is the people. We care what is the ammonia concentration where the people are breathing. And the other reason is because in the IIAR standard, it does also say that the detector shall be located in an area that's easily accessible for maintenance and testing. So when you put them on the ceiling, that's not where the people are breathing. You don't know if the ammonia leak is going to rise or fall, and it's not easily accessible for calibration and maintenance. And so we have always and still do recommend 4 to 5 feet off the ground in the breathing zone. Does that help?
It does, and Micah, I'm reminded of the time we went to a plant and there was an incident while we were there, and they were testing a high level sensor that was probably about 15 feet off the ground, and so they had a big old ladder on it, and we were kind of running through a bunch of tests, and it really wasn't. I don't know. Like in retrospect, maybe it wasn't a big deal, but they had been testing the high level floats on these recirculator vessels, and they were using a pump to kind of transfer liquid and raise the level in the column, and then when they were trying to like drain the hose, something went wrong, and there was an ammonia leak inside the machinery room while we were all inside the machinery room testing, and Micah, do you remember the noise it made?
Yeah, I mean, it made a whooshing sound. I was recording, and this was my first time at an ammonia facility. Okay, first time, and I'm standing there, I'm filming, we're recording these test results, and then I hear this like deep whooshing sound, and then I just look at Eli, and he's just bolted for the door, and I'm like, all right. And so I chased after him, and we got out. I'm like, what just happened? And he's like, yeah, that was a leak. I saw a cloud. I think we ran so quick I didn't smell it, but when we did smell it, they were. So is that called a bump test when they're literally just exposing ammonia to the sensor? Or yeah, so they were up on a scissor lift for doing a different testing an ammonia sensor. Yeah. And I don't think the sensor alarmed, and we were down on the ground coughing and wheezing and crying, and I'm like, bring that sensor down here. I think this is working pretty well, you know.
Well, and then you don't want to be the guy on the scissor lift.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like when something bad happened, and he was like up there testing it when that happened, and yeah, it's not good for easy maintenance. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So those are all the reasons that we recommend it in the breathing zone there. And also, you asked about like where do you place them in relation to next to the condenser. We say our detectors have a radius of 30 feet detection range, and so you want it to be within 30 feet of any potential leak source if you're outside the area.
Yeah, I did not know that. That's really helpful kind of rule of thumb.
yeah, that's super helpful because I get asked questions all the time of like what frequency, like okay, I'm supposed to have them in my loading dock where my evaporators are, but you know, how should they, you know, I have one, but I've got, you know, a string of 12 evaporators that's, you know, like over 100 yards, several hundred yards long sometimes. And it's like, how many do I need to put in there? And so that's helpful.
Because the standard says at least one.
Right. But if we're talking about safety for the people, if their detection range is 30 feet, then it should be, you know, probably every evaporator if they're 30 feet apart, you know, or more than that. So, I mean, that could be overkill, right? But that's good to know because I've always wondered that, you know, and because that's a question I get asked because I'm like, I think you just have to put one, and they're like, but what if a leak happens on the other side of it? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, what do you do?
Now you can get your tape measure out 30 feet. And anytime you guys have questions, or if any of your clients have questions about that, our application engineers will look at floor plans and go, yeah, you need one here, you need one here, you need one here. And they would be happy to provide that recommendation for you if that's helpful.
No, yeah, I wasn't aware of that. One other thing I'd love to just kind of pick your brain about, Debbie, is there's this new requirement in the regulation, so not in PSM, but EPA in their RMP regulation. They have the SCAP rule changes a couple years ago came out, and there's this tiny little add-on in the PHA requirements. I'll go ahead and read it. It's Title 40 CFR 6867 C3, and it's at the end. I won't read the whole thing, but it says, the owner or operator shall ensure monitoring equipment associated with prevention and detection of accidental releases from covered processes has standby or backup power to provide continuous operation. Man, that's a big deal, and I think it's kind of sending a tidal wave throughout the industry. What is CTI thinking about this? What solutions are out there, and how should our clients be thinking about it?
Yeah, we have been getting that question a lot. And we offer just a UPS, a power backup, but it's very, it's just commercial grade. Yeah, and it is hard to know because it doesn't say how long do you have to have power backup, right? And so we defer to a presentation that was given at IIR last year by Bill Lape from SCS Engineering. He said it would make sense, because this is so vague, to go with the International Fire Code, which is 24 hours of backup. CTI doesn't provide, I mean, that would take a generator, right? And so, yeah, it's a challenge for a lot of people. We don't provide a solution. We know that the new regulation is there. We do have the UPS battery backup, that would probably be good for about an hour, which would give you time to get your generator up and started. But we don't sell generators, and I don't think that we will. There's one more thing that I could mention about that, and that is some people do think that having a portable gas detector is an acceptable solution to that requirement. So, and we do sell the portables, so that if your power goes down, we have the battery operated portable detectors that if somebody's in the facility who can be walking around with a portable, that could be an adequate means of meeting that standard, as long as it's safe for them to be there. Like if your power failure is due to a tornado or a hurricane or a major flood, then it's not safe for the person to be in there with the portable either. So it's complicated, isn't it?
It is. Well, and I would love to see that kind of road tested, and maybe that will be one of the benefits of this podcast. If anyone listening has seen that pass the sniff test with regulators, I would love to see that. I hope that's true. And I've even had conversations with clients about that. Yeah, I mean, if you can't tie all your detectors with some kind of backup power, having a portable makes a ton of sense, and I think that's been talked about for years. But again, unfortunately, whenever there's kind of a gray area in the regulation, the way that you learn what the regulators expect is when someone gets penalized. And so, hopefully, we can learn from someone else's battle scars if there are any there.
And maybe an hour of power backup is enough. Maybe 1 hour is all they're expecting. I mean, if okay, so an hour would give you enough time to close everything down, right? To shut everything down.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and like you said, Bill. Yeah, I think Bill Labe, he may have done that 2 years in a row, maybe. Yeah, because he mentions, I think you said it was the International Fire Code, NFPA 72, I think, and then even like in Arizona, they had a similar one where there was like a 24-hour standby requirement, and so anyway. Well, this has been a very productive conversation. We didn't get to ventilation as much as maybe we could have, which maybe, Debbie, just means we'll have to have you on for another podcast at some point and see if we can break down that topic. But thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, and good luck in all your work. Thank you for what you guys do. It's an important part of our industry, so we're grateful for you.
Yeah, absolutely, and you guys keep killing it. CTI is just it's getting out there, seeing them everywhere I go, and so you keep up the good work.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Well, that was Debbie Koske with CTI Gas Detection Specialists. You can find more about them at ctigas.com. Man, this has been great. Eli, thank you for joining us, and man, we look forward to seeing you in the next one. See you, Eli.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun to have good, spunky guests like Debbie, and so look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.